Jai Hind everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel which is Explore Yourselves, Banking and General Knowledge, etc. From Mailroom to Corner Office, A Banker's Journey by Dr. R. Srinivasan. This is the cover page of the book. Today, that is 9th September 2025, I'll be sharing episode number 21. YouTube links of the episodes from 1 to episode 20 is available in the description. Bank of India and IBA Mumbai. The chapter Bank of India and IBA Mumbai will be continuing. One of the most important developments that took place in our bank was the appointment of an executive director from outside the ranks, meaning that the person came from some other bank. At the beginning of 1990, I happened to visit the North Block. By that time, the government had proposed to appoint one Mr. Ahuja, a senior general manager of Canara Bank, as our ED. I had known Mr. Ahuja during my Delhi days, and he was an able person with amiable temperament and considered us as a suitable person for employment in our bank. I had given my consent orally as according to the government. None of the general managers in our bank was senior enough to be considered for this appointment. When I called on the finance secretary, he asked me whether I had noticed one person on the veranda who was smoking like a chimney. I said I didn't. He explained to me that the said person was one Mr. Panniselvam, general manager of Indian Overseas Bank, Madras. The FS said that the person was keen to become ED in our bank and he wanted me to help in getting this done. I was curious to know why FS wants my help in making this person ED of BOI, and so I asked him. He said that he had no personal interest. He said that Mrs. Anna Malhotra, IAS, chairperson of Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust and wife of Mr. R. N. Malhotra, Governor, Reserve Bank of India, wanted it to happen. I asked the FS that if it was so, it was for him to do the changes in the recommendations. For this, he replied that the file duly recommending the name of Ahuja had already gone to the minister and that only I could interfere and speak to the minister because I had good relations with him. I felt embarrassed and I did not know what to do. I went to the minister straight from the FSS room and spoke to him. He questioned me, asking why I was changing my recommendation. Was it because the person in question was a Tamilian like me? I took the remark in my stride but replied, saying, no, sir, it is because he is perhaps religiously close to your faith. I also mentioned to him how A.T. Pannirselvam, ATP, was bringing pressure on the finance secretary. This stumped the minister and he agreed to take my revised recommendation favorably. This was one instance where I feel that a grave mistake was committed by me because this person played havoc with the lives of many senior officers of the bank. He brought about division among them and played politics with the directors on the board. In short, he started his game almost immediately after joining duty during the period I was mourning the passing of my father and was on a fortnight's leave. My father passed away on March 13th, 1990, and 80 Pannirselvam, who is now deceased, joined the bank as ED on March 15th, 1990. He did not find time to call on me or offer condolences, but plunged into his job without wasting time. Almost all the general managers in our bank at that time were unhappy that someone from a relatively small bank has been imposed on them. At one stage, when he was only a branch manager in Indian Overseas Bank, Delhi, one of our general managers was a regional manager based in Delhi. Instead of carrying the team with him, ATP started being critical of the senior officers in the bank, passed unsavory remarks, and making critical notes on files, casting aspersions on the competence of the general managers. It is a pity that one or two of our GMs were secretly enjoying this and did not side with the offended general managers. There was also a vigilance officer who came to our bank on deputation from RBI, and he also took ATP's side. One afternoon, a group of general managers came to my house not only to offer their sympathies and condolences upon the death of my father, but to express their deep distress at the way they were being treated by ETB. In one voice, they said they were not prepared to work in that atmosphere and even threatened that they were prepared to put in their papers. However, as I was in leave, they said that they would abstain from attending office until I returned to duty. I consoled I counseled patience to them and said that I would resume duty soon and would try to sort out the problem. I directed some departments not to send their files to the ED but to send them directly to me. These general managers were so offended that they had resorted to a sort of social boycott of ATP. They would not speak to him, they would not come to the common lunchroom if he was there, and they would not share a table with him, and etc. I must admit that ATP had the guts to face all this stoically, but he reported his side of the story to his mentor and asked her to tell her husband about what was happening. Thus, I was summoned to the RBI governor's office and was given a dressing down by the governor about what was being meted out to a person appointed by the government and who had the support of the RBI. I was told in unequivocal terms that the state of affairs should stop, and if it didn't, RBI might be compelled to intervene and take drastic steps. This was a clear threat to me. I explained to the governor that I was in an unenviable position because it was I who brought this post into the bank. However, by his own behavior, he had alienated himself from the seniors in the bank and did not seem to realize that he should change his attitude. I took leave of the governor, saying that I would do my best to find a solution. The caravan moved on. If ATP had felt offended by the treatment he was getting from his colleagues, should he not have discussed this with me before thinking of complaining about me and the bank to the governor through his wife? ATP went on in his own way, attempting to cultivate the nominee directors on the board by trying to appease them. He used to feed them with wrong information on certain subjects coming up before the board and making them oppose some proposals. On one occasion, we had before the board a proposal to buy about 50 flats for the officers of the bank from a well known builder in Mumbai. He had sold flats in the same building to other institutions such as IDBI, ECGC, and one or two public sector bodies. As I was on the boards of IDBI, ECGC, and DFHI, who were all buying flats from this builder, I knew at what rate they have agreed to buy the properties. I used that background knowledge and bargained with the builder that as I had supported his proposals when those boards were considering the purchase, he should show a special consideration to BOI and reduce the price at least by rupees 50 per square feet. Foot. He agreed and the proposal went before the board for approval. On the instigation of some disgruntled elements, when the subject was taken upon, one director from Bihar, more about him later, sitting at the corner of the table, mumbled and murmured, "Why is the chairman interested in giving up this proposal to buy flats when he has only few months of service left to lay down the office?" Never before had such an insinuation been aimed at me. I was unhappy to hear the comment. I stopped the proceedings of the board for a few minutes, called the director by name, and asked him to repeat what he had said. He feebly started explaining what he had said and expressed his regret if I felt offended. Immediately, I told the board that I was withdrawing the subject and would not bring it up again as long as I was in the bank. This was a humiliation for me, and I knew who the main man behind it was. In the process, it was the bank that lost a golden opportunity to acquire residential accommodation for its staff at a comparatively lesser price. The directors, who were very cordial and helpful to me until ATP joined as ED, slowly started moving towards him to become more friendly and procure special favors. For example, I was very strict with regard to reimbursing the travel expenses of directors who came for board meetings. Some members of the board who were from Delhi, Chandigarh, and Bihar, etc., made it a practice to overstay in Mumbai. As a result, some incurred extra expenses in the hotel where they were put up. Some traveled from Delhi but gave their home address as Chandigarh, and although they were traveling from Delhi and went back, they claimed taxi hire charges to and from Chandigarh. They made several STD calls from their hotel rooms and ran up bills for huge amounts. I did not allow all this. I had asked the board secretary to closely scrutinize the bills and any expense considered irrelevant for their functioning as board members was recovered out of the sitting fees paid to them. This definitely made them feel uncomfortable with me. Our new AD came to their support. He assigned one member of staff for each director to be at their disposal from the time they came to Mumbai until they returned home. He made them come to the bank much earlier than the time of the meeting and allotted a room for them to relax in, and where a telephone with STD facility was made available to them for free use. Thus, he was becoming a favorite of the directors who were so selfish that they did not care about the bank. On the other hand, I went strictly by the rules. Directors tried to tell me that they now had given more information on subjects coming before the board than what was given in the board notes, thereby indirectly telling me that if I needed the meetings to be smooth as they used to be in the past, I should give in and adopt a more flexible approach to them. I said I had no personal interest in any matter before the board and they were at the liberty to do what they liked. Luckily, in Bank of India at that time, there was a system of weekly meeting of what was known as the Head Office Committee. This was a committee constituted by the board. This committee was to meet once a week and had powers delegated by the board to dispose of loan cases that were beyond the powers of HO executors. The chairman had powers almost the same as those that were enjoyed by the board. In fact, the chairman had enormous powers, but I was very discreet not to use them unless the matter was urgent. I was I always preferred to have the benefit of the collective wisdom of the board in deciding matters that were referred to me or to the board. The HO committee was to be presided over by the CMD, and in his absence, the responsibility fell to the ED, or the most senior general manager available. Proper minutes of the meeting, just like the minutes of the board meetings, were kept. Besides the CMD, ED, general managers, and deputy general managers, the assistant general managers were also allowed to participate in the meeting. This was an excellent training ground for executives to shape up as future GMs, EDs, or CMDs. Every subject had to be presented by the concerned AGM who would have initiated it at the department level. When the subject needed to be discussed, the concerned DGM or GM were free to give their inputs and a final view will be taken by the presiding officer to be that the ED or CMD. It is not my intention to waste time and space and write about an individual officer of the bank, but the ED is not an ordinary officer to ignore. Any bank that had CMD and ED not working in close coordination was bound to suffer. There have been instances where such a situation prevailed and the concerned bank suffered. Luckily for me, we had other general managers who could see the game being played clearly and they refrained from falling prey to the machinations of the ED and one or two of his cronies. It was due to his excellent team of general managers that the bank functioned very smoothly. Even at branch level or regional or even zonal offices, if the chief person and the next in command do not work as a team, they spoil the growth of the institution as well as create divisions among the staff. Of course, it is the ability of the chief to take the team along that counts, but if the second man is creating discord among people below him, it becomes a tough job for the chief to carry the team along. The bank had a practice of settling the terminal benefits of retiring employees much later than the date of their retirement, and during my chairmanship, I changed this practice. I told the personnel department that they knew when an employee was about to retire, and it was therefore necessary to see that his retirement accounts were settled on the day that he leaves his office. I also asked the department to ensure that the retiring employee got his settlement check at a function, however small it may be organized in his honor. I hope this practice continues even today. This being so, when a particular senior general manager was to retire, he wanted to take a fortnight leave prior to the date of retirement as he had much more leave at his credit. However, the ED would not grant him the leave but would insist on his attending office until the last day to clear some pending matters. I had to intervene and allow the GM to go on leave, and in a reciprocal gesture, the GM concerned ensured that all the work that ED wanted him to clear was done satisfactorily. Similarly, The senior most general manager was to retire on a particular day. AD was much against his retirement and wrote very nasty remarks on the GM's file and said that his retirement benefits should not be settled. He had a grudge against him and to be wanted to issue a charge sheet on the last day of his service. Can there be a more inhuman treatment to an officer who had spent his career in the service of the bank? I was in a dilemma. What I did was to ask the personnel department to prepare the GM's check and leave it with me. I had convened a board meeting in Pune to coincide with the date of retirement of the said GM, and usually the GM was present at this meeting. Towards the end of the meeting, I requested that the executives present excuse themselves. I briefed the board about the situation and showed the notes on the file made by the ED and sought their advice as to what should be done. The board unanimously decided that the general manager should be allowed to retire with grace and his check should be handed over to him there and then, and the ED did not say anything. We did it. To protect their honor, I refrained from mentioning the names of the above two general managers who are still around. The staff of the bank were demoralized to the extent that they started expecting a charge sheet on the day of their retirement and nicknamed it as the retirement benefit. It took some time to put to rest this fear among the employees. ETP did not spare his efforts to trouble me in any way that he could. There was an instance of a brother of a powerful politician close to the seat of power in Delhi, borrowed from our New York office and who did not repay his dues to the bank. He manipulated people to get the New York office to recommend the modification and enhancement of his loan. This matter came to head office, but at the level of ED, the proposal did not find favor. ED wrote very adverse comments on the file, and rightly so. When it came to me, I accepted the views of the ED and rejected the proposal and agreed with ED to take action against the borrower. When the borrower in New York came to know of this, he reported to his brother in Delhi that the chairman had given orders to take legal steps to recover the bank's dues. This Delhi politician, who derived his powers from a family, was furious with me. I had to meet him at about 1 a.m. in the cold of a December night at his house and give him evidence of a whole sequence of events, and on seeing this he cooled down somewhat. This meeting at that unhealthy hour and in unfavorable weather was made possible with the help of a politician who is still active in exposing scandals, including that of the 2G spectrum scam. He is unrelenting in such matters. Unfortunately, or was it fortunately for BOI, ETP could not become CMD of our bank, but instead took that position in Union Bank of India. But before he moved on, he had damaged the reputation of the bank and demoralized many senior officers, causing them unimaginable trauma and suffering. It was said that his personal life was not peaceful and that he had problems in his family. Ultimately, he too retired from Union Bank and did not live for long. He passed away at an airport in India. May his soul rest in peace. I am reminded of what Shakespeare said through Mark Antony. The evil that men do lives after them, the good is oft interred with their bones. Let me mention one instance when the minister in charge of banking was interfering in our administration and how I tackled that in my own way. This narration is in response to a query raised by one of our colleagues who wanted to know if there were pressures from the past regarding sanction of loan and in administrative matters. I have given enough instances with regard to loans. This instance is regarding our staff matters. The minister in question asked me to immediately transfer one of his loyalists to Goa, as we had moved our man from there to Paris and thus there was a vacancy. I happened to be in the minister's room at that time, but I did not want to tell him about the incumbent being sent to Paris. Simply told him that I needed to find out if there was a vacancy in Goa. As soon as I came out of his room, I called our personnel department in Bombay and asked them to see that the vacancy was filled immediately, even before I returned to head office. I said the new man should go to Goa and take charge, if even if he has to fly, go by rail or road, whatever it took. This was achieved. When I came back to head office, there was no vacancy in Goa, and I faithfully reported that fact to the minister. Another instance was when the minister wanted me to transfer an officer from our Lucknow office to Bangalore because he belonged to Bangalore and the minister was from Karnataka. When the minister told me this, I faithfully noted his instructions on a piece of paper taken from his desk. I came out, tore the note in pieces, and threw in the nearest waste paper basket. When I met the minister on my next visit, he asked me whether I had carried out his instruction. I behaved as though I had forgotten the whole matter and requested for time to go back to head office and find out whether it was done or not. Once again, I noted the details on the piece of paper taken from his desk. That piece of paper with the same fate as the other one. On the third occasion, when the minister tackled me about it, I countered by asking why the transfer was so important. He said that the officer concerned was very close to him and it would be helpful if he was posted to Bangalore. I told him that I had made inquiries and found out that the officer he was referring to belonged to another group of the same Congress party headed by late Gundu Rao. I knew that our minister and Gundu Rao were not on good terms. When I told this initially, he did not believe me. I told him that if it was true and if he still wanted me to send him to Bangalore, I would arrange it right here and now from his office. The minister changed his stance, saying, "No, no, don't do it. You send him anywhere. I do not care." Finally, I told the minister that as chairman of the bank, I was expected to know my staff better than the minister, and if any employee wanted a transfer for genuine reasons, he should always approach the management and not bring pressure from outside. He agreed. See how the time of the chairman of a bank was wasted on such silly matters. If by any chance the said officer is also an active participant in galaxy of BOI stars and happens to read this dispatch, I urge upon him to forgive me for not yielding to the directions of the minister and to have given wrong information about his loyalty or otherwise. I'm sure he will now appreciate that I had no personal prejudice against him and I was only doing my duty as an impartial administrator. At this point, I would like to mention the case of another officer who had spent more than 2 decades in a branch and then in a regional office at the same place. When I transferred this officer to another regional office in the neighboring state, she began dodging the transfer and brought pressure from the highest civil servant in the government. The cabinet secretary, I was furious and did not want to eat. I met the senior most civil servant and explained how for such a long time this officer had remained in the same place. I also proved to him that the officer was more of a liability because there was no growth in business or profit under her tenure. Finally, I told him that I was not going to allow the officer to continue there. Either she accepts and moves on or I would terminate her services. The government official listened to me patiently and finally told me that he would not press the matter further and that I could do what I wanted. The senior bureaucrat was one of the highly respected civil servants who had occupied several positions, including commerce, industry, defense, finance, and ultimately the exalted position of being the cabinet secretary. He was also India's ambassador to the USA. After his retirement and mine too, we both sat on the board of a reputed company. Unfortunately, he is no more. The officer under discussion reluctantly moved out and subsequently moved up the ladder quickly to become ED in another bank and then CMD in a third. And between these jobs, she had an overseas posting too. Every time such a good turn came, the officer called me and thanked me for what I did. I would like to mention an instance where a loan given in good faith became difficult to recover. There was a time when the Yellow Pages phone directory began its entry in our country. I'm not elaborating on the concept of Yellow Pages, assuming that readers are familiar with it. I was introduced to one Mr. R.K. Mishra, journalist and a former member of the Rajya Sabha. He was close to the top politicians of the time as well as several business magnates. He was also editing a newspaper. Subsequently, he became the editor in chief of an English daily owned by the biggest business house in India. I assume that our whole country knows who Mrs. Aruna Asaf Ali was, a great freedom fighter and the one who led the Quit India movement on August 9, 1942 from Azad Kranti Maidan in Mumbai. She was married to Asaf Ali, another great name in Indian history and in whose honor a busy road in Delhi is named. R.K. Mishra was close to Mrs. Aruna Asaf Ali, who was well past 80 years of age. Mishra convinced her that if a Delhi edition of the Yellow Pages could be brought out, it would be a gold mine that could take care of the financial problems that Aruna Asaf Ali was enduring. She agreed and authorized Mishra to approach our bank for an overdraft facility. On our Janpath, New Delhi branch considered the proposal, which was duly considered by the then zonal manager, Mr. P. P. Abram, and duly sanctioned. Possibility to mishandling the matter due to lack of experience or otherwise, the release of the Yellow Pages directory did not come about as planned, and this resulted in the whole exercise proving a failure. When the advance started showing signs of becoming irrecoverable, our Delhi office made all the efforts to recover the money. Ultimately, the borrower, Mrs. Aruna Asaf Ali, was contacted in person. She was in frail health and in bad financial circumstances. She belonged to Easter group of politicians who sacrifice their personal wealth and comforts for the sake of the nation, unlike the kind we see everywhere now. She honestly confessed that she was cheated by people who were around her. She did not deny her borrow the money under her signature, but the people, including Mishra, who landed her in this situation, were not to be seen. This advance became a big debt. I took this matter to the board's notice and sought their advice for further action. The board deliberated the matter for a reasonably long time. They had the added advantage of getting briefed by the ED. One of the directors on our board, who was a nominee of the Congress party, said that we should file a civil suit against Mrs. Aruna Asaf Ali and that we should charge the concerned officer in New Delhi and take disciplinary action. I told the board that as far as taking action against the officer was concerned, I would not authorize it because he took up the matter at my instance and therefore he was not at fault. Except to the extent of perhaps not following up the advance, its proper and dues or taking effective steps for recovery. As regards filing a suit against the Runasa Falia stood firm and said that I would not allow the board to pass such a resolution because under my chairmanship I did not want Bank of India to earn a bad name that would result if we filed a suit against such a great national leader whom the entire country saluted. I warned the director who made this suggestion that if his party came to know his stand on on this matter, he could be sure that he would be censored by his own party. Finally, I told the board that I assumed full responsibility for this advance turning out to be a bad debt. No action was supposed to be taken against Mr. Abram, head of Delhi zone of the bank, nor against Aruna Asaf Ali. I suggested that if the board still felt that action should be taken in this matter, the only course left would be to take action against me, for which I was ready to submit myself. The board considered this and finally dropped the matter and allowed the advance to be written off. I asked the secretary to the board to properly draft a resolution stating that the above facts and put it on record. While I thanked the board for accepting my plea and closing the matter, I felt this was an instance where I went on all out to protect my colleague and also an innocent borrower who got cheated by people around her. Perhaps this is a rare incident and worth recording for posterity. For the sake of record, I would add that Aruna Asaf Ali was subsequently conferred Bharat Ratna. She is no more. R.K. Mishra, the man who let down such a noble person like Aruna Asaf Ali, has also passed away. I do not think there would be another such incident where a chairman of a bank took full responsibility for a loan turning out to be irrecoverable. We should also appreciate the decision taken by the board, who noted without reservation that none of the officials of the bank, including the chairman involved in this case, had any suspicious role to play in this. It was a genuine case where an advance made in good faith in its bright prospects turned bad. Although I was chairman of three banks, one after the other, for a continuous period of nearly 11 years, there was only one occasion when the Government of India Banking Division asked the bank chairman to give a confidential report on every director on the board. The government had been following the practice of nominating directors on the boards of banks to represent various segments of society. Such nominees were mostly persons belonging to the ruling party or those who could influence the concerned authorities to get nominated. The privileges attached to the directorship were prestigious and sought after. Hence, there was a lot of influence peddling. Some such nominated members of the board even printed on their visiting cards that they were on the board of a particular bank. It may not be out of place to give a general idea of how the boards of banks used to be constituted. By convention, a director is supposed to represent certain segment of banking activity. For instance, agriculture, law, accountancy, trade union, social work get a representative on the board, and in addition, Government of India and Reserve Bank of India nominated one each. Officers of the bank and other staff at clerical and subordinate levels also had a seat, each allocated to them. There were exceptions, and some directors were generally reputed and added tremendous value to the board. Bank of India had its own share of directors. Some of them were gems and some others were not. When the government wanted a report on them, I did not hesitate to call a spade a spade. I'm certainly not able to remember the names of those directors, but do recollect that what I wrote about some of them. We had one Sardarji from Punjab who was supposed to represent agriculture. He lived in Chandigarh, to which address the agenda papers used to be dispatched. However, he used to claim reimbursement of his travelling expenses from Ludhiana. Perhaps that was his permanent address. He represented the Punjab Congress Party. Internal inquiries revealed that he did not own even an inch of agricultural land. There was another who was supposed to be representative of the trade unions, INTUC, who lived in Faridabad. He had his address for the sake of reimbursement claims in Chandigarh. There was another from Patna who got onto our board purely due to networking. He was one who hailed from Ghazipur for the records. He was the one who unabashedly asked me once to tell our executives who were based outside of India to bring some gold either in solid state or in ornament shape as his daughter was getting married soon. He was the one who, it may be recalled, passed snide remarks while considering a proposal to buy flats for the offices of the bank, and due to which I withdrew the subject from the board while the meeting was on. I had faithfully reported all the above facts to the government, but before sending this report to the GOI, I had it passed through the ED. My report on the RBI nominee, government nominee, and our own employees or officers' representatives were factual and complimentary on their constructive roles during the deliberations of the board meetings. The same was the manner in which the reports on the representative of legal and accountancy professions were made. The funniest part of this whole exercise was that either the government to whom the report was sent or the various stages through which it passed through had leaked the contents to the concerned directors. You could visualize how the directors would have reacted to this and how their attitude towards me would have changed on coming to know about this. I did not worry about it much and felt that I had done my duty to the government and the country. One or two of these directors came to me and asked whether it was a fact that I had sent such a report. I countered them and asked them to prove what they had said. I said I was prepared to accept any blame if they could prove to my satisfaction about such a report having been sent. For obvious reasons, they could not do anything, but their cold vibes were very much felt thereafter. I did not mind too much as I felt that it was my duty to tell the government what they should really know. Please do not waste your time trying to find out what action the government might have taken on the report that I sent. I'm sure the same system of nominating directors to the board continues even now. Let me share another experience with regard to Diwali and New Year when valued clients have an opportunity to please the bosses in the banks. During Diwali, apart from the sweets and fruits, some clients also sent gifts of value. The value would vary based on the position of the recipients and his proximity to the clients. Some used to send suit lengths, appropriate gifts for the women folk in the family, etc. Similarly, during the New Year season, gifts in the form of imported liquor would find a place in the baskets. I had narrated in an earlier episode about my experience in this regard when I was in New Bank of India, how I returned those gifts, how my boss, the late chairman Tirat Ramtuli, called me to his office and gave me a long lecture explaining that returning gifts would amount to insulting our clients and that therefore I should change my habit and etc. I had also said that we used to collect our fruits and sweets and go and distribute them among the children in a nearby school where blind girls were studying, the Andhakanya Vidyalaya, New Rajendra Nagar, New Delhi. My family and I follow the practice since then. In Bank of India, the Scotch whiskey bottles collected at my home were sent to the bank to use them at the parties hosted for our own staff and other invitees. New Year also brought in various types of calendars, diaries, pens, watches, and other such gifts of good value. My general instructions to my secretariat were that all routine gifts of relatively small value should be collected during the day and kept with them. In the evening at around 5:30 or 6 p.m., the secretariat staff should find out who were all present at various floors of the head office and call them to the 14th floor where my office was. Thereafter, the items collected during the day would be distributed among them. I would not be present and was not interested to know who got what, but the system was very much appreciated and it ensured that during the season some staff members stayed late to view the collections and share items among themselves. On one occasion, I was told that there was a gift of a gold chain or necklace and that it was not exhibited in the evening, but the senior most PA in the secretariat took a fancy to it and took it for herself. Where there was more than one lady present, do you think this would remain a secret? The very next day, I was given this information. I called the lady who took the gift and told her that she had betrayed my trust in her and that she should call the donor and return to him politely. This was done, and thereafter no such incident occurred. During those years when the annual closing of bank accounts was on December 31st, and later when this date was shifted to March 31st, I had made it a practice to send handwritten letters to a few thousands of the bank's valued clients, thanking them for their support and sharing with them the broad details of the final figures of the closing year. Such letters were sent immediately after the financial year ended, which means either during the first few days of January or April, as the case may be. This was very much appreciated by the clients, and the RBI took note of this pioneering step by the head of any nationalized bank. All of us know how often bank executives travel within the country and abroad. Generally, visits to metropolitan cities and zonal offices are the place frequently visited by the chairman. The next level of executives also chooses to visit regional offices or urban centers, and gradually the place to be visited keeps pace with the level of the visiting offices. I'm sure there may be several regional offices and similarly several training centers that are outside the orbit of higher officials of the bank. I should think that I too must have been guilty of this omission during my banking career, but I can take pride in saying that I visited almost every training center if I happened to be in that place even for a short time. Visiting rural branches of by the chairman was probably out of question. During the government governorship of RBI of the late R.N. Malhotra, he brought about a significant change in this unwritten policy. He directed that every chairman and other senior level executives should visit some rural branches in those states where the bank was a convener of the state level bankers committee. He directed that such visits should not be just a casual passing through the branch. He wanted that such visits should be well planned in advance. Bank's customers should be informed in advance that the borrower's accounts should be reviewed and efforts should be made to recover overdue advances. The working of the branch should also be reviewed with reference to its growth in business, popularity among the people of the area, security aspects, and last but not the least, whether the books of the branch were kept up to date and balanced regularly. The governor also insisted that the chairman should stay at least one night in that place. In case there was no proper facility to stay overnight, the chairman or other executive could stay in the neighboring town but should visit the branch the next morning and leave the place only after completing the task enumerated above. A tough task, was it not? Malhotra was a hard taskmaster. I admired him and still am in awe of this man whom I consider a very practical governor. He called for a report on such visits. It fell to me to visit a rural branch in Bihar, and Mr. P. N. Joshi, a general manager, accompanied me. We visited our Jamshedpur branch, which was a fairly large branch with record number of savings accounts. This was because of the staff of Tata Steel had their salary account with this branch, and that our bank that was very popular among them. I had the privilege of staying in the Tata Steel guest house, which was much better than a five-star hotel. Rusi Modi was the chairman of Tata Steel at the time, and he was a blue-eyed bachelor boy and close to J.R.D. Tata, the legend. Rusi lived for 96 years and passed away recently. Born in January 17, 1980, and he passed away on May 16, 2014. Incidentally, one of our lady staff members there, whose husband was employed in Tata Steel, a Tamil speaking couple, had a son named R. Madhavan. I happened to meet him in the reserved lounge of Madras, now Chennai airport, when I was in awaiting departure of my flight a couple of years after my retirement. I introduced myself to him because he was and is a popular film star, acting in many films and in in different languages. When I told him that I was retired chairman of Bank of India, he said that he had heard about me from his mother, who told him that I was the only chairman of the bank to ever visit Jamshedpur. P.N. Joshi and I visited a rural branch in the interior where we had also planned to give some small loans to deserving people. While reviewing the borrower accounts, we came across a defaulter. I called the borrower to the branch and talked to him, asking him why he was not repaying the loan. He said that he needed the money for improving his land and to acquire cattle, etc., and that if he repaid the loan, he would not get another. I clarified his misconception and assured him that he would get a fresh loan if he repaid the previous one, and after making doubly sure that I would honor this commitment, he simply unrolled his dhoti, which contained lot of currencies. He repaid the entire loan in one go there and then. I immediately asked the manager of the branch to quickly examine his request for a fresh loan and saw that it was approved before I left that place. Both the borrower and I were very happy at this turn of events. I duly reported this to the government, who was very impressed. One of the final things that I was about able to do in Bank of India related to getting our Kolkata zonal office building inaugurated. At that time, I was almost nearing the extended period of my services in Bank of India, as I was due to retire on August 29, 1991. I was to retire on May 29, 1991, but was given a special extension in service till August 29, 1991. The new building on Brabourne Road, Kolkata was ready. It is a beautiful building. The Governor of Reserve Bank of India, Sri S. Venkataramanan, kindly agreed to inaugurate the building, and this function was organized on August 22nd, 1991. Apart from our own bank's elite clients, I had arranged to invite other prominent people of Kolkata with whom I was already familiar due to my earlier assignment as chairman and MD of Allahabad Bank. Sri Venkataramanan, he is one of the very few brilliant bureaucrats of our country. He was earlier Finance Secretary of the Government of India. He had settled down in Madras after retirement, but was recalled by the big boss and was made the governor of Reserve Bank of India. He liked me, but I did not know whether it was genuine. There was an occasion when he chose to speak against me to Big Boss, as I did not do his bidding in respect of supporting a big business house. When the boss heard that the government was not recommending me for some other assignment on the grounds that I was superannuating soon, I was told that the boss remarked, "When did he become a pope? When did he become a pope? Has he forgotten that I have made him the governor after he had retired?" The inauguration went off well. The governor paid rich tributes to Bank of India and also said some nice words about me. He referred to my impending retirement and said that such a useful person's services would continue to utilize in some useful position. He therefore advised me to not accept any other offers but wait for the government to recall me. But nothing as such happened, and I happily retired on August 29, 1991. On the previous night, I had met the Prime Minister Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao at his residence. He said that two more CMDs of Central Bank of India and Canara Bank were also retiring on the next day, when my extended period would also expire. He felt that it would be better for me to hand over charge of the bank to my next man. He added that he was aware of a commitment to me and that he would consider me for a position of Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank of India. I handed over the charge of the bank to Sri E.T. Selvam, who was the ED. Thus, my long journey in a banking career that started as a night clerk on March 1st, 1949, ended on August 29, 1991, as chairman and managing director of one of the finest banks in the country. It was not easy to overcome my emotions on this day, but it was a great solace to see so many who had gathered on the 14th floor of the building to bid me adieu with tears in their eyes. That meant that I did touch some souls, and some hearts were willing to melt for me. With this, I conclude my writing and sharing my experiences in the banks with all of you. I had mentioned earlier that I was toying with the idea of writing a couple of pages about some bitter experience that I had more than 2 years of laying down to the office as CMD of Bank of India. Unfortunately, it dragged in some executives who had spent all their lives in the service of the bank and who also retired with their reputations intact. It is absolutely unpardonable for any management to cast impressions on the loyalty and honesty of such officers, more so when they had laid down their offices. By that time, they do not have They do not even have access to the records in the office that could easily prove their innocence. More on this separately, but for the purpose of the serial writing, this may be treated as a concluding part of the history of my career. Let me say once again how much it has made me feel happy to share my thoughts and to see the responses from so many of you responding week after week, and that too after almost a quarter of a century having gone by in between. I could sense the sentiments. I thank the God Almighty to have made it possible for me to re-establish contact with my fellow bankers of Bank of India, to whom any amount of saying thank you will fall short, far short of my feelings at the bottom of my heart. The chapter Bank of India and IBA Mumbai is completed now. The following chapter will be challenging times. Thank you very much for your patience. Please to like, share and subscribe to this YouTube channel.